shining the light of Christ into the brokenness of infertility, pregnancy, and infant loss. One NEDC embryo adoption couple is involved in a really inspiring effort to do just that. So I want to invite you into a conversation on the blessings, including small groups and scholarships that they are a part of offering to fellow strugglers. Hi, this is the Embryo Adoption Podcast, brought to you by the National Embryo Donation Center. You can find out more about us by going to embryodonation.org. Again, that's embryodonation.org. I'm Mark Mellinger, the Marketing and Development Director and your host, and I am joined by NEDC embryo adoption couple Rodney and Mary Leah Miller, who are board members of Blessed Brokenness, the terrific resource on which we are focusing this episode. Mallory Ware is also here, and she is one of the co-founders of Blessed Brokenness. We're going to dive right in. Mallory, let's start with you. How did Blessed Brokenness start?
Gosh, it was back in 2017. I had been deep in my journey of infertility for about 3.5 years and had just experienced an ectopic pregnancy. And luckily, my loved ones could see that I was in a dark place and told me I needed to get into a group of women that could help me through this, that were walking something similar. And so luckily I stumbled upon A Blessed Womb, which our other co-founder, Ann Adams, wrote. And when I got there, she was handing us loose leaf papers of lessons that she had learned through her years of miscarriages. And it was just beautiful and really gave myself and the other women around the healing and the hope that we needed in that season of life. And so as we continue to go and our friendship developed, we had women say, hey, this needs to be more than just this small group. And so we started thinking about it and really praying over it. And God individually told Ann and myself that we would work together one day. And then he gave us the idea of the nonprofit. And so, in that moment, we looked at each other and we're like, okay, Lord, but we don't have any experience in a nonprofit. We have no money in the bank to support this nonprofit. If you say we need to do it, we'll do it. We'll just continue to serve these women as you have instructed us right now. And sure enough, it was amazing to see his faithfulness through it, because every time we would pray, first and foremost, you have to register for a nonprofit, and that requires money and somebody who has the knowledge to do it, which again, neither of us had. And so he would make those divine connections and then provide for it as well in the monetary sense. So we just kind of kept taking these small steps that the doors he kept opening, we kept walking through. And we formed Blessed Brokenness and have now, been able to open up our small groups to be virtual and in person and serve women in more than 100 cities, which is amazing to just understand and look back and reflect on. And we also knew, just like you guys, that there is a financial burden associated with infertility. And we wanted to be able to ease that burden and really give hope to those couples who felt like the door had been closed on their journey. And so we offer scholarships and have been able to do that and experience those precious babies that have come from it, but also be able to really nurture and support and love on the ones that are still walking the journey and have continued to get those not yets. And that's where we really love being able to pour the hope and promises of God into their circumstances.
And by the way, I should mention that the website is blessedbrokenness.org if you want to check out more about this organization. I mean, you can be in a support group. You don't have to be in Alabama where the group is based. You can do it basically from anywhere with these small groups popping up, and the material is terrific. We'll get more into that a little bit later on, but again, it's blessedbrokenness.org as you listen And after this podcast, when you're done, if you wanted to go ahead and check out the ministry. So Rodney and Mary Lee, I want to bring you into the conversation now. I mentioned at the outset, you're one of our NEDC couples. So I've had the pleasure and privilege of welcoming you here to Knoxville several times. How did you first get connected to Blessed Brokenness?
So initially, we got connected through the A Blessed Womb small group. So I made the first connection and went through the small group 2 years in a row, or 2 semesters in a row. We call it semesters for the small groups. And it was about that time that the actual ministry, Blessed Brokenness, was formed. And so Rodney and I, while we were not co-founders, we were there kind of from the ground up. So I initially was introduced through the small group. And then it was during that time that Blessed Brokenness, the organization, came to fruition. And then Rodney got involved, has had a heart for this just because of our journey and how long it has taken us. And so once Blessed Brokenness was formed, we were invited to be on the board. And so Rodney serves as director of the board, and I sit on the board as well. And so that's how we initially got involved in Blessed Brokenness.
You referenced your infertility journey. Can you give us a little window into that?
Yeah, well, I don't know that the window would be little. Our journey, our journey is it's lasted over 10 years. But we're getting close to having that promise fulfilled of having children. We nobody ever thinks that they're going to struggle to have kids. So it was a bit of a shock. In fact, I can say, after we did IUI a few times and then did IVF, I really wasn't even there present. I was at a church conference, so I'm missing for a good reason, but I wasn't even present there for the first transfer. Like I was just operating under this assumption we were going to have kids and IVF was going to be the result. And I'll never forget the phone call I got from Mary Leah that we didn't even do a transfer, that our embryos began to arrest, or I guess dissolve, as most people might understand it, on day 3, and we're not existent on day 5 for the transfer. And so that's really where our journey began. And from there, we've done IVF 6 or 7 times all over the country. We've seen, the best doctors, the most renowned doctors that this country has to offer, from Birmingham to New York, you name it. We've tried, traditional IVF. We've tried InVicell, which is a newer type of fertility treatment being offered that is amazing and has a lot of success. And none of that worked. And so I guess it was about 2 years ago, we were trying to figure out, well, do we go the route of traditional adoption? And while I was comfortable with it, Mary Leah just still had this faith and this belief that she was supposed to experience pregnancy one day. And of course, I didn't want to step into anything we both weren't on board with. But I didn't know where that left us, because IVF hasn't worked. It's unexplained, what happens to our embryos really, but it just hadn't worked. And if she's not on board traditional adoption, where do we go? And we actually had some friends reach out to us who knew some other people who had recently done embryo adoption, and they now had a daughter as a result of that process. And that really piqued our interest because it's an alternative that was available to us. It satisfies my desire of having a family, however it is we get there. And it also satisfies Mary Leah's desire and belief that she's supposed to experience pregnancy. And so that's when we started this process. I guess it was within like a year or 2 ago. And it's just been a blessing so far up to this point to walk through it and see it from the adoption side. And honestly, we had been going through this at that point for 8 or 9 years, and we're unaware that embryo adoption and donation was even a thing. So it's just a blessing to hear about that, to know about it. And that's one of the reasons we are so excited to do this with you, is to help increase awareness from the people you all are connected with to the people we're connected with, to make sure people know the NEDC right there in Knoxville, Tennessee, they have thousands of embryos just waiting for someone to provide them a home and give them a chance. And so we just think that's an amazing opportunity. And we actually have a transfer coming up in about 3 weeks, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's and we're looking forward to having you back. It's, if you think of it this way, it's very hard for people usually to wrap their minds around embryo adoption, but it really is the only way that a mother can be pregnant with her adopted child. If you think about that, that's something that would not have been possible through science and medicine just 30 years ago, but it is now. And I think it really shows God's heart for life, that he's given these tiniest image bearers, who in some cases have been frozen 5 years, 10 years, a couple of decades. He gives them the ability to maintain that life force. And I don't mean that in any sort of esoteric sense, to stay alive is all I mean, and come out as perfectly beautiful, healthy little children. There is something that really resonates deeply with you, Mary Leah, about the pregnancy experience and carrying the child. Can you unpack that for me?
Yes. So I don't know. I felt like in a time of prayer early on, that we had this desire to have children, and what did that look like? And I just really felt like just the Lord placed it on my heart that I would be pregnant. And so I've held on to that for a very, very, very long time. To the point where, sometimes you question, like, okay, well, it's been almost 10 years. Every time we've gone through the fertility journey, our embryos arrest. So how is that even going to be possible? And I just think holding on to that faith and that hope, our journey led us to embryo adoption. But I think that we had to walk this 10-year path to get here. We look back on it now, had the Lord told me, had I felt like in a time of prayer 5 years ago that we were supposed to adopt, we would have done that, but I kept having this burden that I was supposed to carry a child. And I didn't understand like how that was going to take place. And I think also the Lord was preparing our hearts and our home for this, because it is a little bit different and not very many people have heard about it. There were alternative methods for us to have children that were presented to us that we just felt like were not our journey. And then we found out about embryo adoption. And I know that, there are struggles that come with pregnancy, but it was something that I just really felt like, I was supposed to experience, and I want to experience it. And having the embryo adoption, we saw it as we get to adopt children 9 months earlier. And then I have the opportunity to carry, our baby. And when that baby is born, or babies, I get to say, your mom loves you. I carried you. And not that that's different from, it's a little bit different from a traditional adoption. And obviously you love that child, but to be able to experience carrying the child for 9 months and then birthing the baby was just something that, that I felt like, and I told Rodney that I was supposed to experience. And I think that's the thing for many women, is that's one of the things in going through your fertility journey. You wonder, am I going to be able to do this? Because I feel like this is what God created me to do, that I am supposed to carry babies. I'm supposed to procreate. And for whatever reason, my body is not doing that. And embryo adoption gives women that chance to carry that baby. And, I don't want to say selfishly, but to feel like they're fulfilling the role that the Lord placed them, on this earth for. And so I think that it's just absolutely beautiful. And I'm so excited that we heard about it. And that's one of the reasons why we have now become so passionate about it, is because I feel like a lot of couples don't know that this is an option for them. And we want to spread awareness that, hey, if you've come to an end of the road, or maybe you want to adopt, but you don't know what that looks like because you still want to carry a child, here's another option for you that is life affirming and can help grow your family.
And you wouldn't have gotten there unless you embrace that broken road. And Mallory, I wanted to bring you back into the conversation here, because as a co-founder, you say that you've learned to embrace brokenness, which that's going to be a paradox for most people. And you've experienced God's blessing as a result of embracing the brokenness. What does it mean really to embrace brokenness? I mean, this is the center of your ministry.
Yeah, it is. And it is a hard one. It's not an easy road to do it. I look at brokenness and it can be just like we say, so beautiful and blessings can come from it, but we have to allow God to work in it and through it. I always think about this embracing the brokenness and kind of what it represents is like the stained glass window. We all know it's broken pieces of glass, but if you allow God's light to shine through it, it's a beautiful picture. And sometimes we don't know what that picture looks like. A lot of times we don't know what that picture looks like, but we have to allow God in the process and understand what the brokenness is, to understand our grief and to really allow ourselves to grieve, but we just can't stay there. So often the world has said if something tragic happens to us that we have 4 days to mourn and grieve, and then we got to be back on and 100% and act like nothing happens. And that just doesn't work. But we have to grieve, but we can't stay in it that long. So, what does that look like? And a lot of times some people have kind of swept things under the rug and tried to move on with life, but we really have to open that wound back up so that God can really clean it out and restore it and bring it back to life. And so it looks like rejoicing in the midst of our grief by praising God, even though our circumstances haven't changed. We still had the miscarriage. We still have a negative pregnancy test month after month, but being able to embrace that and understand that even though what the enemy wanted for evil, God can make for good, but we have to allow him into it. And then those blessings will happen. In my journey, when I finally got to the place where I allowed myself to grieve the disappointments of negative pregnancy tests to the ectopic pregnancy, I really understood what my heart was yearning for. Yes, we all yearn for our child that we desperately want and to build our family, but I also found God in that grieving, that valley that I was in. And that's really what we need to do when we embrace the brokenness is find him and then allow him to work in and through us and to really heal us. It's crazy to think though that journey did produce blessed brokenness, where now I have the honor and privilege of comforting others and bringing them wonderful news about what their journey could, looks like and options for them, and letting them know that it's okay to be disappointed and it's okay to grieve, but we got to be able to use that or allow God to use that and work in and through us for it.
Well, really well said. And Rodney and Mary Leah, this is hard, isn't it? Because when you talk about brokenness being blessed, yes, if it leads you to a deeper relationship with God and leads you to embracing what he has for you in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise, that is a great thing. At the same, so you have to acknowledge the brokenness, you have to grieve it, you have to spend time in it, without, it seems, camping out too long and getting bitter, jaded,
Right.
hardened. You two have been waiting for a decade to have a child, and what you've hoped for still isn't there. How do you navigate that? And in that, what do you bring to Blessed Brokenness as an organization?
Well, I think this concept that you and Mallory have been discussing about embracing the brokenness is key. It's just vital. I can't imagine what our 10-year journey would have looked like without us doing that. What we have to understand is we can't change our circumstances, but we can change our perspective. As Mallory said, you're still going to have the miscarriages. You're still going to have the negative pregnancy test. Like, there's only so much you can do about that, but it's how you respond to that that we can control. And that's what's been so helpful about Blessed Brokenness, because to me, you're able to do that, and you're able to change your perspective by shifting your focus to the Lord and the hope that's found in the Lord, like these women find in this curriculum for our small groups. And that is best done in community. For the women getting in the small groups and talking about it and realizing they're not alone in this, that there's nothing they're going to face that somebody else hasn't already faced, and to talk through it. And same for, the men, to know that there's a community of men there that can help out. Because like I said earlier, nobody plans to have to go through this, but Mallory touched on a little bit. If you have the right perspective, the Lord can use it for good. You can find him in the waiting. And I can tell you, Mary Leah and I both have. We would not be where we are in our marriage or in our relationship with the Lord today without embracing that brokenness, without understanding this is a season, this is a journey, and we're going to make the best of it. And honestly, it's been 10 years going now, and we're getting closer to having that family we've always desired. And I wouldn't trade our journey for anything. It is not what I had in mind when we got married or when we tried to start having kids, but I wouldn't go back and change the past 10 years for nothing. It has brought us community. It has brought us hope. It has brought us closer to the Lord. It's brought us closer to each other. It's brought people like Mallory and her husband, Ben, into our lives. We have so many people who are very close friends of ours right now that I can't understand how we would ever known them had we not gone through this. So when you step away from the disappointment a little bit and look at it, you can see God working in it. And for that, I'm grateful.
Anything you'd add to that, Mary Leah?
I think you said it very well. And I think too, I look at it as how does my pain have purpose? And turning that pain into purpose, but not just, and what does that purpose look like? Well, that's a kingdom purpose. And so for us, it has been the Blessed Brokenness organization and the community. And so I know we've mentioned a blessed womb. So I went through it and I've been leading it now since 2018. And so for me, it is these ladies that are in my group. And, each time we start, as we call a small group semester, and going through our curriculum, it's loving on them and supporting them and encouraging them, but also trying to shine the light of Jesus into their circumstances. And a lot of times that's not what we want to do. But as Rodney said, it was this journey that brought us closer to the Lord. Do I hope that we would have reached this point without this journey? Yes. Can I sit here and tell you that we would have? I don't know that I can. And, I think too, embracing the brokenness and looking at this, it is how did the Lord need to use me and change me to get me to be the parent that he wants me to be when my blessings are received? And we can say the parents that we would have been 10 years ago are not the parents we're going to be today. And we needed to walk through that process. We needed to draw closer to him. And the children we're going to raise now would have been completely different 10 years ago. And so we look at that, and that's why Rodney says we wouldn't change it, because we know for whatever reason, this is the journey that we are supposed to walk. But because of that, our marriage is stronger. Our children are going to be, hopefully world changers for the Lord, and the way they're going to be raised is going to be different. And then even just embryo adoption, I think I touched on it briefly earlier. You asked about carrying a child, and I'd held on to that for so long. But looking back on it now, I also realized the Lord had to prepare my heart for embryo adoption, because so many people also still want their own genetic children. And I think, and that's fine. And that's natural. But I mean, there are some people that know from the get-go that they want to adopt. For us, we really desired our own genetic children, but in embracing this brokenness, turning this pain into purpose and having him work on our heart, I think his will for us and now what our family is going to look like have been aligned, because he needed us to walk through this to get us to say, yes, embryo adoption is how we're going to start our family.
I can't wait to see the conclusion of your story. And we're going to talk about that here in just a few minutes as we move toward the end of the episode. But first, Mallory, I'll turn back to you. If somebody is listening to this and getting curious about blessed brokenness and how they can benefit from these paths that God has had you all walk. And I should mention, Mallory, you do have a child. So that desire has been granted, and that's a wonderful thing. But for people who are getting curious about it, talk about how the small groups work, who they're for, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hope that they are curious and that they reach out to us. As always, if there's any questions, they are welcome on our website. Again, blessedbrokenness.org. You can reach out to us and we will hop on a phone call or respond via email, whatever works best. But our small groups are in person or virtual. So you are welcome to join us wherever you are. Right now, they're kind of 3 times throughout the year. It's about 11-week curriculum that we walk through. Again, the book is called A Blessed Womb, and it's available on Amazon, but it goes through the different states that every woman needs to walk through as we are facing this journey of infertility and pregnancy loss. We really discuss grief and fear and the marriage, because marriage takes a toll when you're walking this as well. Sometimes it pulls you strong or closer together, and sometimes there's those barriers there with communication and just emotions, and our emotions are already very high when we're walking this journey. So we cover an array of topics, but really with the focus of God's truth in there. And so it's like Rodney said, it's not changing our circumstances as much as we will be praying over these women and for these women's families to grow. We are praying not for, we can't change the circumstance, but we can change the perspective of our circumstance, and really seeing how our circumstances can change us. And so anyone who's walking infertility, whether you are 3 months in and just very frustrated that the negative pregnancy tests are coming every month, to those who have experienced miscarriages, stillbirth, if you are in secondary infertility, meaning you have a child, but you are struggling getting pregnant with your second, those are all, we welcome anyone and everyone. It doesn't have to be a particular type of grief or part of your journey. It is anyone who is really struggling with starting their family. And we've even had women who, they have children. It's just, they haven't grieved maybe something in the past, a miscarriage in the past, or something that they're struggling with within their family unit. So it is, again, for anyone, it's virtual or in person. You can go on our website under the small group tab and click to join or click to lead a small group. If you are someone that has gone through this journey and have gotten your miracle baby, or just have healed from the process and would love to speak life into other people, we encourage that as well, and come join us. The greatest thing about this book too is it can go across any grief or hardship that we experience. Yes, the topic is infertility and loss, but the lessons that are the foundation of the book really can be part of any hardship that we experience. So it can transition really well for those women and those men. And for the men, we, like Rodney mentioned, we have those mentorships. We don't have a small group where they talk through the process, but if they want to get some one-on-one and just have somebody pray with them, or just kind of talk, just have, so a lot of times men hold in everything because they're supporting their wife through this, and they just need an opportunity to talk to someone else other than their wife. And whether that's a vent or just get some healthy feedback, we have that available for the men as well.
I think that's a great point, because I have met so many men over the years through my work here at the NEDC who, you know that there are a lot, I don't want to sound sexist, so please don't take it that way. But there are a lot more support group offerings for women, and women as a general principle seem to be more open with their emotions, at least in most cases than we men are. So I've noticed there is a lack of resource for men who are going through infertility, and I've seen it. I've seen how happy the men are, just as happy as the wives when they finally do have those children that they've wanted. I have seen, when you can really drill deep occasionally, and a man who hasn't seen that baby come yet, you can see the wear on his face from carrying the burden that not only his wife has, but he has too, because they want to be parents. So men do feel this just as deeply. And I think it's great that at Blessed Brokenness, you're focusing on both sexes, because that's so important. And Rodney, I know that's close to your heart as well. That's one thing I like about you being the chairman of the board of this organization. I think this is an emphasis you'd really like to see grow.
Yes, it is. And we're exploring other ways of reaching the men and helping them. As I'm sure you can imagine, men generally don't want to join 10 other men once a week like the women do and talk low sperm counts and things like that. So the format has to be different. And what we've experienced success with up to this point is meeting with them one-on-one, and we have several men like myself who have been going through this for years. And it's not that we know everything, but we do know what we have tried and what has worked and what hasn't worked. And so we can provide advice to them. And, what I hear from a lot of guys is, how do I deal with my wife? How do I handle her emotions? How do I be there for her? How do I pray for her? Or maybe they're not getting the answers from the doctors they want, or they're not sure their next steps. A lot of guys are frustrated that their intimacy time is now dictated by an ovulation app on their wife's phone. And they need to know they're not alone in that. There are several of us who are going through it, and several of us who have been down that road before. And I feel like when you get them in a one-on-one setting, they're a lot more open about it, and they're a lot more willing to talk about it. But we, even as early as this past weekend, we're discussing how do we embrace this community aspect with the men also, and get them together. But right now, what we have found that we have the most success with is just meeting with them one-on-one. So if there are any men out there who have any questions or just need that, whether it's a meeting over coffee or a phone call, reach out to us. We have a handful of guys who have done this enough to where we can get you answers. We can get you into a place of being comfortable. And I think the primary thing for those listening or watching is learning how to pray for your wife, not just on your own time, but with her. That is something she needs. Because a lot of times they feel like they're in this alone. And by alone, I mean really alone, not other women or friends or colleagues, but not even their husband. And I think providing that support for the women goes a long way.
I did want to touch on the scholarship opportunities before our time is up. Mary Leah, Rodney, can you talk about the scholarship opportunities that Blessed Brokenness is privileged to provide? Yeah,
we are. This came a little later after the small group and after we started the nonprofit. We began to just talk, and all of us who are a part of this have been through it, or we have some board members who have friends who have been through it. And so for the most part, we understand that fertility treatments can get expensive. And just because you don't have the money right now for fertility treatment doesn't mean you can't be a great parent. And, a lot of times they've gone through IVF and they've spent money and they've maxed out credit cards. So they need to save up for 6 to 9 months to do it again. But we have donors and supporters who want to be a part of this. And, maybe they've aged out of having their own kids, but they love this ministry. They love the idea of it. And so we have a link on our website to where we open our scholarship cycles a handful of times a year, but when it's open, you can initiate the application process online. And we just, we like to meet people where they are. And I tell you what, of all the things we do, there's nothing more exciting than calling a couple and telling them that their application has been accepted and we're going to scholarship a fertility treatment. We've actually started recording those because it is the most joyful thing we do. But on top of that, I mean, we get to see fruits of it. To know that we have scholarshiped a couple who is going to have to save up money for a whole nother year before they could try again, but we scholarshiped them and they stepped into it right now, and now they're pregnant. And then we find out, however many months later down the road that they're having their child. I mean, it's just such a blessing to be able to do that. So we do offer fertility scholarships for couples in need. And we also have grief scholarships. Our process with that isn't necessarily an application process. It's really just making us aware of it. Whether you have experienced multiple miscarriages or maybe you've experienced child loss, people need serious professional help a lot of times in those situations, even more so than we can provide in a small group setting. So we have donors who have stepped up to the plate and donated money to Bless Brokenness to provide, grief scholarships for couples who need that extra help. And so that's available as well. And it's our way of giving back financially. We want to meet people where they are. We want to help them in the small groups. We want to meet with the men, and we want to find those couples who we know will make great parents, and they just need a little financial assistance to do so. And we want to step in and fill that void and make it possible for them. And we're just so thankful the Lord through our donors has allowed us to be the vessel through which that happens.
Yeah, man, it's a great vision, and it's great work. Again, blessedbrokenness.org is the website that you can go to get connected to this ministry, find out more about it. That's blessedbrokenness.org. So before we go, Rodney, Mary Leah, I'm going to ask you to share what you're comfortable sharing about where your journey with the NEDC stands right now, and I'm going to ask, how can we pray for you moving forward?
Well, our journey, we're very excited. We have adopted 5 embryos. We did adopt 4 previously, and I experienced my first pregnancy, but we now have a heavenly baby. And so at around 8 weeks, we did lose our baby, but we are, while we are disappointed, we're not discouraged, because we did achieve that pregnancy. And so we've adopted 5 more, and we're looking to see what the Lord does with that. So we're in the April cycle. And so that's where we stand. And so the best way that you can be praying for us right now is that, the medications that I'm taking right now, that my body is responding to them, and that my body is being prepared to carry the children that the Lord has for us and that we've adopted.
Well, you're going to have a lot more prayer warriors throwing up those prayers to heaven after this post. I can tell you that. Rodney, Mary Leah, Mallory, what a blessing to have you on, and thank you so much for what you're doing with Bless Brokenness. I love that the NEDC, we at the NEDC can partner with you, and I look forward to seeing that partnership grow throughout the coming years. So it's going to be great, and I've loved the time today. If you would like more information on the NEDC, you can go to our website. It's embryodonation.org. Again, embryodonation.org. I'm Mark Mellinger, and this has been the Embryo Adoption Podcast.